belonging to secret societies were involved. Elements of the Office of Naval Intelligence who belonged to these same secret societies were involved. Elements of the Secret Service and the Central Intelligence Agency who also belonged to these secret societies were involved. The assassination was performed on the 33rd parallel, and in Dealey Plaza there's a plaque commemorating the location of the first Masonic temple in the state of Texas. Richard Milhous Nixon is a Freemason. But Richard Milhous Nixon is not responsible for the assassination of JFK, even though he may have participated in his planning and execution. I can tell you that E. Howard Hunt was in charge of training the shooters and was on site to supervise. Returning to 1959, when Richard Milhous Nixon was vice president, Henrik Kruger says in the Great Heroin Coup, Nixon also helped plan the Bay of Pigs invasion, chairing the 5412 group, which was a National Security Council subcommittee in charge of covert actions. The vice president pushed for the plan's approval before his 1960 presidential race against Kennedy. According to E. Howard Hunt, Nixon was the invasion's secret action officer in the White House. Kruger says that CIA Cuban invasion activities were organized through Operation 40. Kangas, who spoke in Willits on January 24, 1992, says, other famous Watergate members of the CIA Bay of Pigs invasion that Bush recruited were Sturgis, Hunt, Bernard Barker, and Rafael Quintero. Quintero has said publicly that if he ever told what he knew about Dallas and the Bay of Pigs, it would be the biggest scandal ever to rock the nation. Nixon lost the 1960 race by the smallest margin in history. At first, Bush, Nixon, Cabell, and Hunt decided to just go ahead with the invasion without informing Kennedy. Then at the last second, at 4 a.m., just 2 hours before the invasion was set to go, General Cabell called JFK and asked for permission to provide United States air cover for the CIA invasion. John Kennedy said no. Another unusual coincidence was that General Cabell's brother was the mayor of Dallas at the time of the JFK assassination. According to Stone, in the movie JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald was a dupe and was set up. I concur with that. In fact, I have a photograph, and we have done body measurement proportion comparison with Lee Harvey Oswald in the photograph and in custody of the Dallas police, and it is one and the same man, and he is standing in the doorway on the bottom floor of the book depository building as the motorcade passes by. He was not even inside the building. That is on the John F. Kennedy assassination documentary tape that we have available for you, and it shows who shot the president. You can see it with your own eyes on this tape. We've had this tape available for several years. Not one single television station in this country, except one in Atlanta, Georgia, and one in Salt Lake City, has ever dared to show it. The news anchorman in Salt Lake City was fired immediately afterwards. The TV station in Atlanta, Georgia, showed it on a late-night talk show. It's an independent station that's not on cable and has a very short broadcast range, and because of that, no one is bothered now. Why would a Marine be given Russian language training and then supposedly defect? The KGB must have had an inkling what was happening because they left Oswald alone. And that's to their credit, because Oswald was an operative of the Office of Naval Intelligence, the same organization that I was a member of. What was Nixon's grand design for the United States and the world drug trade? Berkeley's Peter Dale Scott, writing in the foreword to the Great Heroin Coup, says, quote, the establishment press failed to look critically at Nixon's war on heroin. Instead, it blandly reported Nixon's decision in June 1971 to provide $100 million in aid to end opium production in Turkey, a country which, according to CIA estimates, produced only 3 to 8% of the illicit opium available throughout the world. At the time, perhaps 80% of the world's illicit opium was grown, much of it by CIA-supported tribesmen in the Golden Triangle. And most of the heroin still comes from there. Does this possibly give a different perspective to the Vietnam War? I might remind you, folks, that the biggest drug problem in this country is not heroin, although the importation of heroin is on the increase. The biggest problem has been cocaine and crack cocaine. And all this stuff about heroin is merely a diversion away from the biggest problem. They have no intention of stopping the drug flow into this country because it does three things. Number one, whoever's addicted to drugs is under a form of euphemistic slavery. They are no threat to anyone. They can be controlled always by reducing or increasing the supply of drugs or raising or lowering the price. They can be used to create crime when the price is raised and the quantity of drugs available are decreased, to threaten the middle class so they will call for more control and take away our rights under the first 10 amendments of the Constitution of the United States. The war on drugs is a war on the Constitution, and there is no war on drugs. Understand that. And wake up. Just wake up. Kangas alleges that if John F. Kennedy had lived, thousands of American men and millions of Vietnamese would have been spared. Kennedy had signed a National Security Action Memo, NSAM, number 263, in October the 11th, 1963, that all American troops would be home by 1965. In Kennedy's movie that Stone made, JFK, the movie JFK, points out that the military-industrial complex would have suffered. If the war ended, the CIA's heroin smuggling might have declined as well. Kruger states, quote, Nixon set up a special narcotics action and intelligence group right in the White House. In the same period, the Special Investigation Unit, the famous plumbers, or the infamous plumbers, I should say, set up shop in room 16 of the Executive Office building. The two groups overlapped, and several of their members were associates of Mafia kingpin, Santo Trafficante. This partnership between the Mafia and our government, but not our government, the CIA, goes further back than the Vietnam War, however. According to Congressman Ron Dellums, Press Secretary Max Miller, quote, the alliance between the Mafia and the CIA goes as far back as 1941, then the OSS, unquote. And I've outlined this already in the 5 hours of the hour of the time that was devoted to mind control, and you can order those tapes from Stan Barrington. When the United States was attempting to insert its troops into mainland Italy to fight Mussolini's and Hitler's troops, a deal was needed, and the bargain has remained intact since. Houston Post investigative journalist Pete Bruton in February 1990 first broke the story of Mafia-CIA ties to the savings and loans, and that's the only place it was ever seen was in Houston. Key savings and loan failures, including the BCCI swindle, has led to the depression-like situation in which the United States finds itself. George Green, the publisher who owns American West Publishing and publishes the Phoenix Journals, was heavily involved in the rape of the savings and loans. There are people in Texas standing at the border with hangman's ropes waiting for George Green to return. And I hope he does. Some of the savings and loans with mob CIA connections are Charles Keating's Lincoln, Vernon of Texas, with its link to former House Speaker Jim Wright, Miami Sin Trust and David Paul, and then there's Denver's Silverado, with guess who? George Herbert Walker Bush's son, Neil. Don't you think it was a coincidence that when the investigation concerning his role was hot and heavy, Saddam Hussein was given the green light to invade Kuwait by Ambassador April Glaspie on July 25th, 1990. Quite a while, it looks like. Nobody wakes up. It keeps raining. It keeps storming. The country is going to wash away. I don't mean that literally, folks. I mean it figuratively. That's what this program is all about. That's what it's all about. In the Unified Scandal Theory, Newsweek, September 23rd, 1991. All the cover-ups are outlined, including the Inslaw case. Software stolen and given as a payoff to October surprise brokers. Investigative journalist Danny Casolaro called it the octopus. And he was suicided, that means murdered, because he supposedly made the connections among Inslaw, BCCI, and the October surprise caper. I can tell you that we already published everything that he uncovered in my newsletter months ago. Also the fact that he was murdered. And he also uncovered the existence of CIA bases underground on Indian reservations in this country. You see, the CIA is forbidden to operate within the borders of the United States of America by its charter and by law. So to get around it, to circumvent it, they went to a foreign country. You see, the Indian reservations are considered to be foreign soil under the law, and it could be misconstrued that they are legally operating within the borders of the United States while they are on Indian reservations. And that's where all this BS, and I mean it BS, about underground alien bases comes from. It's the cover for the CIA's operations illegally within the borders of the United States of America to bring about the New World Order by running mind control operations, propaganda operations against the American people. Wake up. The headline in the San Francisco Chronicle, 8/1991. Probe finds unusual links between failed savings and loans, BCCI. As the Village Voice 11/5/91 story asserts, it's all one big conspiracy, and that's what I've been telling you for years. For years I've been telling you that, and now all these other researchers are confirming what I've been saying for years. Wake up. Another aspect of the octopus is the murder of Martin Luther King. Allegedly, James Earl Ray acted alone in the assassination. However, James Earl Ray's new book, Who Killed Martin Luther King, paints a different picture. The foreword is by Jesse Jackson, and he says, I have always believed that the government was part of the conspiracy, either directly or indirectly, and I can tell you indirectly, the government, per se, is not responsible. There's elements within the government who belong to secret societies, either directly or indirectly, to assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Not only did James Earl Ray have 8 aliases, he also had 3 facial plastic surgeries for FBI documents. Why? Records show categorically that there was more than one person involved in the shooting. One 3-page FBI report has all entries blacked out, except for 4 innocuous sentences. Why? Lawyer Percy Foreman was paid $165,000 to defend James Earl Ray. Instead, Foreman coerced Ray into pleading guilty. Why? While in prison, James Earl Ray was stabbed 22 times in a murder attempt in 1981 and nearly died. Why? Did someone want him silenced? Someone powerful enough to get to him in a maximum security prison? Another infamous murder of a black leader was that of Malcolm X, who was killed in February of 1965. Malcolm X had traveled to Mecca the year before to expand his consciousness, whatever that means. He was espousing the peaceful coexistence of the races. If you listened to last night's broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, you know what this is all about. According to agents of repression, quote, it has been convincingly argued that the Federal Bureau of Investigation was involved in the orchestration of the assassination of Malcolm X, unquote. Quote, Malcolm's personal bodyguard, Eugene Roberts, was later discovered to have been serving as an infiltrator of the New York police